Departmental Committee of Finance and National Planning. We are here jointly with the Committee on Agriculture of the National Assembly, following up on an inquiry or a memorandum that has been submitted and assigned to this joint committee to look into how to revive and to commercialize sugar, the state-owned sugar companies. So we have started our day one today. We are doing stakeholders engagement. So this morning we met the MCAs as people's representatives in the areas that is affected by these sugar companies. Then this afternoon we're meeting the senators, members of parliament and governors. Then tomorrow we meet the farmers, we meet the ownership of this or the management of these companies. Then towards the tail end, now we meet the National Treasury, Kenya Revenue Authority, and the Ministry of Agriculture as the implementing agencies. Of course, now we part of the assignment or the TOR that has been given to us by the Speaker of the National Assembly is on the issue of debts owed by these companies to GOK. Chemilil company owes 9.9 billion, Sony Sugar owes 7.3 billion, Zoea 62.9 billion, Moroni 26.1 billion, Miwani 20.5 billion, a total of 128 billion shillings as money that they owe GOK. These particular sugar companies also owe GOK taxes in terms of penalties and interest of around 50 billion shillings. And therefore is to look at now, the ask here is that they want the taxes forgiven, they want the debt forgiven. But one of the things that now we want to inquire is about what happens to the other creditors, for example. What happens to other people to other institutions and creditors that these sugar companies actually owe money to? What happens to the pensioners? Those people that actually been working in these sugar companies and have actually never been paid. How do we make sure that even though the intent is to revive this sector, how do we make sure that it's not abused in future? So that you don't just run down an institution knowing that at the end of the day, government of Kenya will come and bail you out and pay off those taxes and those loans. And again, what happens to those individuals that have been, we had them being mentioned, that actually deliberately ran those institutions down, talking about misappropriations of funds and all that. So this is some of the inquiries that we're looking into, and also doing all this and taking interest making the farmer the center stage of this, whether it is the merger model, whether it is a leasing model, so making sure that we protect the interest of the farmers. Because what you've had, the debate, I would say, is a political debate, is a directive debate, but now we need to put pen and paper and put now what's the intention of the people of this region and the intentions of His Excellency the President into a legislative framework that can therefore be implemented and that will lead to revolutionizing this sugar sector and making sure that farmers earn their guaranteed minimum return, that people continue to work in those factories, and we supply Kenyans with sugar and not to rely on the imports which you're not even sure of the safety.
The sugar milling companies have huge issues. There are problems, and these problems include poor governance as a result of making the wrong decisions, mismanagement of resources, and some of these which emanate from deliberate decisions made by the management and the governance structures of the institutions. They also have structural failures. They have been unable to perform within the space that they have been given, where they are operating from, in the sense that the the policies are wrong. They have inefficient research system to produce better cane varieties that will mature at a very early age. Our cane varieties that we are using in this country mature at between 18 and 22 months. Some go up to 24 months. In other countries, we have read reports that some cane varieties mature at around 9 months, and they have high sucrose content. So they don't just mature, but even the sucrose content is high. They also have problems in a lack of capital to operate. Most of them, of course, are debt, ridden, like my colleague has just mentioned. And in this particular issue, I would like to point out that collectively, out of the 128 billion we are talking about today, The farmers are owed more than 1.7 billion shillings, the individual farmers. You can imagine how much they have been suppressed, by that kind of loss in terms of their money that is not paid. The salaries arrears to the staff, more than 5 billion shillings, 5.234 billion to the staff members, which means people are working without being paid because the factories are not running, optimally. Of course, taxes to the government are around 50 billion. Development loans that they have taken from various institutions amount to more than 65 billion. And there are other creditors like NSSF, NHIF, and other statutory deductions, which they have not remitted up to a tune of 5.2 billion. So the total is what is coming up to 128 billion. There is a proposal by Treasury or the Kenyan government has intentions of revitalizing some of these factories, and now we've been looking at how do we go about this. There are core issues that we've been looking at. Some of them is how do we revitalize these factories. Some are very ancient or aging, machinery, extremely inefficient, using obsolete technology in the 21st century, and therefore the operational potential is very low. So the cane crushing, what basically needs to be done in a day, they are unable to deliver the amount of, turnover that probably is optimal for a good machine of the time. And therefore, this needs to be looked into. So there are many proposals that have been put on board, and we are still looking at many more, depending on who the stakeholders that come to talk to us. We will listen to them. We'll look at what is viable under the circumstances. We'll look at what works, and then we shall make our proposals back to Parliament to advise the House on the direction to move, and which will in turn advise Treasury on what options to take and what strategies could be developed out of this. Cane growing in Kenya is a sensitive subject. It covers quite a number of people. About 8 million people are involved in this. More than 300,000 smallholders are engaged in this. It's one of the key, economic activity in the western part of the country, and therefore needs to be looked into very, very carefully. On the other hand, we have potential to grow enough cane to produce sufficient amount of sugar in this country. We need about 1.12 million tons of sugar in a year, and we are able.
Another thing on the governance and management, let good managers be brought to manage these sugar factories, not politically correct managers, who will be answerable to their bosses in Nairobi and not the common man. And it is our hope that when the agreements are properly spelled out, the involvement of the common owner engine are spelled out, and things are made public, the common man will benefit. So let the government come with a good heart for the interest of the common man and reflect on the good investors that made Mumias succeed, made Achemerit succeed during those days, because all these are known to the government. And the careless importation of sugar in Kenya, the government must address that properly. Let us not pretend we want to revive and commercialize the sugar company, yet under the table, we know our sugar barons who are going to be used.